Hey, I'm Nico, and today I'm here to talk about an in-progress project called Developing and Implementing an Open Source Textbook with a Little Help from My Friends. I will talk more about the amazing undergrads who helped me, but I just want to briefly acknowledge them here. We have a lot of ground to cover, and at the end of this presentation, you will be able to explain the value of open educational resources broadly, and this specific textbook describe concrete strategies that I've used to make it accessible and diverse and that you can use in your own work, and discuss my approaches to creating this textbook utilizing help from my institution and from volunteers, which maybe will inspire you. We do have a lot of ground to cover, so I'm happy to discuss more via email, or we can schedule time if that would be helpful. First, I want to briefly acknowledge the value of this project. I teach nursing students, and they are very busy and hardworking individuals. They really need to conserve all their resources, including their time, energy, and money. And I wanted to keep that in mind when designing this book. They also need a textbook on genetics that is clinically focused, not esoteric, diverse and inclusive, and up to date, and includes access to reputable resources and tools that can be used by clinicians. I searched pretty far and wide and could not find anything that met my standards on these points. So I decided to create something myself. I also learned that students are spending a lot of money on textbooks, about $725 per year, which, if you are working a minimum wage job after taxes, that's going to be like almost 100 hours of work. So it's not a negligible expense for them. So I really wanted to make something that was free. Free is always good for everyone, but it also makes it more equitable. There are lots of students at my institution who come from marginalized backgrounds and lack monetary resources. And so I wanted to be mindful of that. I also wanted to be customizable, that I could adapt it over time, adapt it to different learning groups, undergrads or graduate students, perhaps, and something that's accessible to people with diverse needs in terms of learning, disabilities, etc. I wanted it to be something that was portable and that they could take with them, use in their careers, and search for the information. And I just felt that an open educational resource would be way better than a print resource on all of these points. So let's talk about some of the features of my textbook. We'll go into many of these here. First, let's talk about screen reader compatibility. I needed something that students could use multiple viewing screens and have it be easy to navigate, whether they're on a computer, a tablet, their phone. I needed something that would allow me to use headings so that the screen reader could pick up on in-page navigations. And I've chosen to use Google Docs because it's a platform I'm really comfortable with, and I use their built-in headings for this. I needed to use the built-in list features so that the screen readers could pick up on lists. And you'll see an example on a coming slide. And it was important that the links describe both the destination and function instead of saying things like read more here, or just like putting the hyperlink, which would be picked up by the screen reader as http:// whatever, et cetera, et cetera. So putting something like read more about three-parent babies as the name of the link is more compatible with screen readers. I wanted to reach students who are experiencing attention deficit hyperactive disorder, but also students who maybe have a stronger or less strong background in this and want to focus their reading where it needs to be. So I use this question and answer format where the header will ask a question and then the answer, which is a subheader, will be a succinct overview of what that section is going to be about. And then if people understand it, they can skip it. And if they don't, they can read on. So one heading example here is what is the simplest technique to visualize chromosomes? And a student might be like, oh, karyotyping. I remember learning about that. And then they could skip on when they realize they know the right answer. Whereas others might want to read on and learn more about the protocol, etc. There's a nice list here that the screen reader would pick up nicely. This relies on the organizational hierarchy within Google Docs using these built-in headings, which are pictured on the right-hand image. In terms of the images in my textbook, I worked with my undergrad volunteers to identify existing images when possible, because this is the simplest solution. And we utilized the stock images database that I presented on at Open Ed 22. I also work with them to learn how to evaluate existing images for relevance, simplicity, diversity, and inclusivity in terms of race, ethnicity, religion, disability status, but also looking at power dynamics between like patients and providers depicted, et cetera. And we had some standards that we developed around this. We considered accessibility for red, green color blind people, not using those colors together, generally ensuring that there's good contrast, using a contrast checker to evaluate it, and making sure that we are not relying solely on color to identify between key aspects of any figure or diagram. When an image wasn't available that was open access, I worked with students to create novel images using Canva Pro. We would talk about what I want, find similar images that they could use as a reference, and then make sure that they cite any OER that they used or modified in the caption. Speaking of captions, we made sure that those were numbered consecutively, gave adequate context, but were concise and consistent across the images within a chapter and across chapters, making sure to credit the sources and provide the licensing information. Also important for accessibility is the use of alt image text, which describes both the purpose and content of an image and is essentially what text you might have to add if that image were not there. This is something that's narrated by screen readers, and we know that it's often cut off around 125 characters, so we were mindful of that. And we know that screen readers usually say image of, so making sure to keep that out of the alt text. Beyond screen readers, alt text is used by search engine bots to find your content and mark it as relevant for a search. So how did I go about doing this with my undergrads? Again, we're just going to skim the surface, so I'm happy to discuss more. The first thing is I joined the OER instructor learning community, which was really valuable support for me. It provided me some funding, some mentorship from librarians who are experienced in creating and using OER, as well as some resources like a roadmap, tools, and check-ins, which gave me some much needed accountability, although I still managed to fall a little behind. The next thing we did was establish volunteer roles, and I broke the work up into different committees, writing, editing images, and then ad hoc committees for various aspects that kind of popped up as needing a little TLC and attention. When working with undergrads, it's important to give them lots of instructions and tools. So we've been working hard to create and update these as time goes on. Here's one for how to use headings to get that question and answer format. In below that on the left, we see an SOP for adding content to textbooks, giving recommendations for where to go to find existing content, some information about some recommended genetics books. And then for the editors, they got a nice little checklist that breaks down all the categories of things they're supposed to look at and gives them some clarity on what a good quality section would entail in that capacity. The other important thing was to get organized because we have a lot of people working together on this. So we created an Airtable where each of the questions and answers has its own row, and then people signed up to write and edit those sections. We also created a time tracker so we could give people appropriate credit and just help us with planning. And we had all volunteers sign a talent release. We've had over 16 people now, including some people from the past. 16 current members are working on this. We've got 7 chapters in development, and we've spent over 33 hours so far. I do think that's an underestimate because I don't think they all filled out my time tracker. The roles are working well, as well as the general tracking efforts using suggestion mode in Google Docs to make changes, track changes. I get the ultimate say. And then I use Slack to give shout outs to the people who are doing a good job, which I didn't picture here. I need to continue to build this, expanding the team, creating new specialty roles, making new content, new chapters, getting better SOPs, and leveraging the expertise and experience gained in this first round. Here are some of the references. Here are the people at the bottom who helped me, specifically the undergrads. And here's how to get a hold of me if you need anything. Thank you all so much. And I look forward to working with you.